Good afternoon. Welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage. It's Friday, and this should be a weekly update, but most of it is probably going to concern the Dart, so I don't know where I'm at. I guess it's just part of the vlog. This week definitely flew by. I'm not sure how much I actually accomplished, but I did, I believe in the last video, remove the rear end, and I sold it. I put it on Marketplace right after I lowered the jack down from pulling it out of the car, and she's gone, just like that. We're committed now. I had to dodge, the Mopar questions when the guy was loading it as to what exactly was I doing to this poor thing. I tried to be as vague as possible, because, a Chevy motor, transmission, and a Ford rear end. Well, that doesn't go very well with the old Pentastar group. And I believe I've told the story, but I'll say it again. If I had $300 in about 8th or 9th grade, I would have had a 69 Roadrunner. And I would have been well on my way to being a Mopar guy. I was already hooked. Their marketing campaign in the 70s had everything a kid wanted. Bright colors and, lots of crazy stuff like that. I believe they even credited with pioneering the Hemi muffler or the turbo muffler. So back when I used to mail money away and get catalogs sent to me so I could study all the engine groups, I can still name all the Ford engines and all their groups and all the displacements. Same with Chrysler and Chevy, of course, that comes natural. And I know I was happier back then, because the less you know, the happier you are. And back then I was all about, hey, dual exhaust and headers, that must make it a race car. And a set of Gabriel hijackers and some N5015 tires and a set of side pipes. All right, back to reality here. When I was removing the 8 3/4 rear end from the Dart, I disconnected the rear shackles and spun the nuts off the U-bolts. I hadn't even torqued them completely when I stuck the rear end in and out in the driveway so I could roll it around. And I lowered the springs down so they're facing the floor. They're hanging down from the front bolt. Pulled the rear end out, stood back and looked at it, and the passenger side spring is facing toward the inner part of the car. The driver's side's hanging straight up and down, passenger side's like this. It has a spring relocation kit that was already installed by the ace welder that did the rest of it. I don't want to sound critical of other people's work, but this is pretty low on the totem pole. And the box is in crooked. A little bit, a couple degrees. I'll go show you how I'm going to fix it, because I believe cutting the box out is probably worse than just fixing it in the method I was going to use anyway. Under the rear of the Dart, this is the offending bolt, and if you look closely, it's hard to tell on camera maybe, but that box is crooked this way. It's higher over here. And the hole is already somewhat egged out. You could pull the spring up and it was all bolted in. It would probably be just fine the way it is, but I know it's crooked, so I need to fix it. Before I knew the bolt was crooked, I was going to make some brackets that bolt to the leaf spring mount, the former leaf spring mount, and have them, shaped over here with a reinforcing hole, because this is really thin anyway. So in this case, I'm going to elongate these holes, get the bolt so it's correct in the right spot, and then when I bore my hole in my support pieces and weld it up, the bolt will be correct. The spring doesn't actually touch the box, so that's the rest of it. If I didn't tell you it was crooked, you probably wouldn't notice, but that's how I'm going to fix that. I wonder if that kink in the fuel line affected performance. On this side, I'm going to incorporate a yet-to-be-determined designed mount using the piece of frame that's exposed here and this side for my new subframe connectors I haven't built yet. And I'll incorporate reinforcing the hole on this side in the process. I've also determined I cannot look at this spare tire hole anymore and this rusted license plate support, so I'm going to cut all that out of here And when if I do that, it'll actually make removing these pieces easier. I'd like to grind all that stuff off and use a piece of tube. And with the spare tire drop out of the way, I can just cut it off with my hacksaw. After the 8 3/4 rear end left, the jack was free, so I used the engine crane to put the 9-inch Ford up on my newly built stand. It actually fits pretty good. My little half moon fits right under the pinion. I found more uses for old socks. This is a Currie, C-U-R-R-I-E brand. It's 3 1/4 tube axle, extra thick. It has 31 spline Currie axles. I believe they're new big Ford ends. Yes, they are. They have 3/8 bolts, T-bolts. The brake kit came with it. They're 11x3, which is huge, which should do a good job stopping the rear of this car. I had already cut whatever brackets were on there before, so I'm ready to weld on my spring purchase. It's, I believe, a PEM offshore housing and pinion support. It was a gift from my brother. It's super rugged. I bought a pallet of NASCAR 31 spline G-Force Detroit style lockers, and they're all 3.25 side bearings, and this was a 3.06 case, and I saw an ad for a set of adapter bearings to put a 325 OD bearing on a 306 case, which is the inner piece where you press the bearing on is different. Long story short, I ended up betting the guy at Quick Performance. He told me they didn't exist. Turns out he had a set in stock, and he threw in a t-shirt for winning the bet. That was the bet. So, and this has a 350 gear set. Has a 1350 yoke. This is actually one of the Speedmaster ones I bought. It's 28 spline, small pinion Ford, and they had this OD for a 35 spline pinion. So in other words, the yoke fit nothing. I attempted to contact Speedmaster to explain to them that they're building it wrong, and I had to machine it down, and they pretty much told me they don't care. It was cheap, and in this application, again, this whole project is junk, just like this. And for what it is, it's going to do a fine job. I do like this has jacking bolts. These are to remove the pig, because when you put a bead of seal around this like I did, I like to wipe it all off so you can't see it. But man, oh man, you can hardly break it loose when you put a jack under here and the rear end's still attached in the car. You can hardly bust that out of there. You could probably run it without nuts. So in this case, you take all the nuts off, back off that, and drive these in against the housing, and it breaks it free. I'm a little bit bummed that I scratched my paint job, but I'll have to touch it up when I weld on the spring perches anyway. I like to put a drain plug in the bottom, and then I just take a piece of roll cage tubing and weld around the drain plug. The drain plug's up in the hole, and that gives you a nice jacking point. And I always weld on just some 1/4-inch bolts to support my brake lines and the flexible hose. That's just temporarily tied there while it was stored, but nothing fancy. But we're talking $1's worth of stuff, and you got yourself a nice jacking point, and the brake lines are all secure. I haven't necessarily settled on a set of rear wheels. If I run these wheels, I'm going to paint them black. They're not in great shape anyway. And these 275 tires will probably be good enough to putt around on before I, actually try to take it to the strip and make a pass with it if we ever get to that point. I'm kind of waiting for my son to get a little bit older so he'll get interested in it. So, that's all factors into the time frame. But these are dual bolt pattern, 4 1/2 and 4 3/4. And as far as offset goes, they're almost ideal, but not quite. I really need something with a little more negative offset in toward the center. If I can find a set of steel wheels that fit the bill, that's probably how I'm going to go with hubcaps, and that's my favorite anyway. But either way, this car's going to have black wheels on it. This brake drum is on the Model A, but you can see it has 3 bolt patterns: 4.5, 4 3/4, and 5 on 5. That's how most of your aftermarket drums are. However, the combination of parts that's on this Curry rear end, this set of drums is 4 3/4 and 5 on 5. And I can see my axles are 4 3/4, which is where the studs are now. And the inner set is 4.5. Now I'm converting the front of the Dart to disc brakes. And this vintage Mopar had 5 on 4-inch, which is what these front wheels are, in 14-inch. So these things are gone. But my front disc brake kit, if it ever shows up, is going to be 4.5 wheel bolt pattern. So if I wanted to change the drums and move the studs, I could match the rear. But in reality, if I get a flat, finding a Chevy bolt pattern wheel, which is where the studs currently are and the drums work out, is probably easier anyway. Because I'm unlikely to carry a spare tire, and if I do, I'll have to plan accordingly. Or if I knew I was going to do some long drive, which I probably am not going to do in this car, I could go ahead and swap the drums and move the studs in so the front and back took the same wheel. Recently, in another late night purchase, I found this wheel bolt pattern indicator. You kind of set what size you want, like we're on 4 3/4 right now, and you just line it up with the studs. That works pretty good. I also found this style, and same deal, you just line it up on your studs. That's 4 3/4. I'm not sure which one is handier. They both work. Left over from a few videos ago, I did find the correct Breeze brand torsion style hose clamps that are smooth on the ID, so I can finish my coolant hoses. A pack of 10 cost me $52. But hey, I'll have spares, and I, at this point, wish I had just welded on AN fittings, but I guess I was in a mood. I came to the realization, after I built the Powerglide, that I didn't have a torque converter suitable to install. I have converted the input shaft to turbo spline, so it takes the same torque converter as a TH350 and a TH400. So with scores of people running 8-second elapsed times in their sloppy style LS turbo Mustangs and whatnot, and their converter of choice is the Jegs XHD, and the most popular is the 60429. It's made by Transmission Specialties. It is made in the USA. It's rated for 800 horsepower, has the anti-ballooning plate. It's also rated for a trans brake. It has 7/16 bolt holes. For the money, now last summer, last time I looked at the price of them, they were like $350. This one cost me $460 because they've gone up like everything else. This is 29 to 3200 stall. Kind of tight for what I would normally spec out. However, if you add to the tight side, you have less chance of blowing through it. As you get up near its rated horsepower capacity of 800. I'm only shooting for 600, so I think this will be a good combination. The 60430 converter is 32 to 3500, I believe, and that's probably good if you have something you're having trouble spooling, you need something a little bit looser. But I'm going to try this one. It's basically going to be street driven on the street driven car anyway most of the time, so if it's on the tight side, that's okay. I wish I bought them back when they were a better deal, but that's not the world we live in at the moment. The paint job isn't bad, but they really missed whatever they set down over there when they painted it. No big deal. Because I'll be touching up the paint, I'll need to grind probably right there a little more for my ground. For my welder, when I weld on my pilot adapter. I believe I've shown this before, but the only thing these adapters are good for is to act as a jig while I weld it. It perfectly goes over the hub a little bit, centers up my extension, and I just weld the hole full. I started making these with a bigger ID and I just tack them in 3 places, but this hole's only about 5/8, so I'll just fill it full of weld. And if I had to remove it, you still can. Just like that, with a little bit of MIG welding. I love my MIG welder. It can sit for weeks and doesn't leak any gas from the last time I had the valve open on the tank. Love it. So yeah, I just use this to center it. I just tack the middle, remove this so this doesn't get messed up. And it makes a good jig, and now a little bit of paint touch-up. It's ready for installation. These weld-on pilots, I wish somebody would step up and make and sell them. I guess I could do it, but I'm not sure I want to get into the business of it. I've actually emailed several businesses and offered, the idea they could take and run with it, because it seems like people would want to buy it. I know people do. They ask me all the time where I got it. I made them, the ones that I use. But anybody could do this at home, and this allows your torque converter to not bind up on this in the crankshaft and pushing the thrust bearing. It eliminates that. You still have to shim the correct pull out for the pump, usually with the dished flex plate and this weld on adapter. I end up with like an 1/8 inch shim on each bolt. And then I know when the flex plate flexes, it can do so. This can run in and out of the crank at will. Nothing's going to stop it. This has a shoulder. It's going to stop that action. I found this interesting. These are the genuine Mopar, made in the United States, weld-on spring perches. This is a set of Moroso weld-on spring perches. The difference is the size, the ID, where the spring perch is going to locate on the spring. Here's my genuine, brand new Mopar Superstock spring on the left side of the old dot. This is a Moroso spring perch, and you can see how nice and tight that is, and only a little bit of wobble. And it's slightly shorter, so it fits the arc of the spring a little better. The genuine Mopar perch is kind of like a hot dog down the hallway, and it really doesn't fit the arc of the spring that great. It would tighten down. I believe I'm going to use the Moroso. And it's a good day when you have just enough spray paint left in the can, gloss black in this case, to touch up my torque converter. I have about 5 minutes to spare before I go up and meet the school bus when my boy gets home, and I'm still waiting for the UPS truck to show up with my long-awaited BTE transmission order from Cyber Monday. I called late at night, and the woman I talked to the other day, super helpful, super nice, says, because I was one of the last ones to call and take advantage of the giant sale. There was some pretty good deals. That's why I stocked up a little bit. I'm also one of the last orders to get filled. Missing in my order are 2 bell housings, one for a Glide, one for a 400. But I have another gear set for a Powerglide. I ordered this stuff back when I was doing the first Powerglide for the Dart, and I had all the Powerglide stuff spread out. I said, you know what? I should just put a second one together. That way I'll have it, a spare, or sell it. You never know. And that was my mindset in November. Here it is, second week of February. And I'm going to get all but my bell housings. I ordered some pans and the gear set, some other stuff they had on. Everything was on sale, so 20% off, I believe. So I took advantage, and I really wasn't in that much of a rush. So you got to be understanding nowadays, and it'll be here shortly. Have a great weekend. Like, share, subscribe. I haven't said that in a while. Could definitely use some more subscribers. Keep this thing rolling. For all you formerly subscribed people, thank you, and I appreciate the loyal followers. Take her easy.